Oh, hey, you're up. Oh, hey, you're up.
Hit that flying vagina or what?
Oh, hey, you're up.
You're
Oh,
gonna
hey,
die.
you're up.
Again
Hit that flying vagina or
again.
what?
Oh, hey,
and
you're
again.
up. Oh, hey, you're up.
Hit that flying vagina or what?
Oh, hey, you're up. Oh, hey, you're up.
Who's Bill Murray?
Oh, hey, you're up. I'm not sure if you remember my name or not. You were pretty wasted last night. I'm Bubbawheat, and you're listening to my podcast, It's Time to Rewind, where we're in the death days of autumn, covering the Happy Death Day movies one loop at a time. Today, we're discussing Tree's second loop in Happy Death Day 2U that starts at 42 minutes and 1 second, with Tree waking up, admonishing herself for a rookie move, and ends at 46 minutes and 1 second, with Tree electrocuting herself by dropping a plugged-in hairdryer into her full bathtub. And joining me today is my guest, Matt from Back Again Sequel Podcast. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Every time I'm like reading and looking up the name of your podcast, I keep in my head. I keep changing it to Back Again Sequel Cast.
The sequel cast that are back again. No, I know it's one of those things where when I was making the title of the show, I loved just the name Back Again. But then when you're doing like social media and then you're like doing your YouTube channel and Spotify and everything, it's like, God, this is a long title. Back Again Sequel Podcast. But yeah, I mean, this if there ever was a movie that is perfect for the title even of our show, it would be Tree having to go back again over and over in both movies.
Yeah, and speaking of this going back again, what is your history with the Happy Death Day movies?
Yeah. I think I'm trying to remember the first time I saw the first Happy Death Day. It may have just been like I didn't see it in theaters. It may have just been on my own because I love Groundhog's Day. And when I heard that they were doing that in like a horror genre, I was like, oh, that's like really smart. I'm surprised no one's done that before. So I really love the first movie and I revisited it a couple times. And I actually watched the second one before we started doing the podcast. And I remember thinking at the time, like, this is an interesting sequel. And I don't know if that was maybe the precipice for starting to think about like talking about sequels than future, like on our show. But overall, I have nothing but like respect for Christopher Langdon and for this franchise that he's created and this kind of little, I don't know, he's got like his own little like pocket verse in like the Blumhouse world. But overall, like I just really enjoy Jessica Roth's performance in these movies, and I really appreciate the fact that these movies you can tell that everyone who's making them really care about this kind of day repeating itself trope, but then also really care about the genres that they're playing in, whether it be horror, comedy, and then with this one, sci-fi, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I really like the kind of Back to the Future 2 vibe of this movie
Yeah,
too. So
that they even name drop.
yeah, literally. Because there's something else I was watching recently where it's like, oh, they're doing like a Back to the Future kind of 2 thing. I think it was with Stranger Things, with like Volume 5 that was just coming out. I don't know if saying that's gonna mess up like the date of when this is released, but there seems to be a lot of love for Back to the Future 2. I keep seeing like references in movies and TV shows, which is interesting because I like that movie too, but I actually don't think that movie's like necessary. But that's a hot take, so I'll save it for something else.
Yeah, for the longest time I would say that Back to the Future 2 was my favorites, but I haven't rewatched those movies in a while. I feel like I need to revisit them again, which is disappointing because at some point I believe I owned the trilogy on DVD and then I sold it because I don't even remember why. Just I don't know, maybe just because I hadn't watched them in a long time. But then I was like, oh, I want to watch them and they're not streaming anywhere, at least not in anything that I subscribe to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it used to be a movie that was always on cable, Back to the Future
Mhm.
2. Like it was just like synonymous with just like Saturday afternoons or something, but there's also like all this controversy with like them using Crispin Glover's face in that movie, and so
Mhm.
we don't have to get into all that. maybe they kind of like started off this idea of like just in general going back again. And I think even to contrast that with or compare that to Happy Death Day to You, it is nice that this sequel doesn't fall in the tropes of what most sequels do, where they are repeating it, but they're doing it kind of like in a fresh way. And I really did like appreciate that watching it this kind of second time around. But it's also hard to find. Like you can find Happy Death Day streaming like every October, and then Happy Death Day to You. It's kind of hard to find streaming, and maybe because it's more sci-fi based. I don't know. So
Yeah, I think so because it doesn't fall into a lot of the horror movie. It's a weird genre because it's a sequel to a horror movie, but it's much more like I would say the first one is probably like 50 or 60% horror, and then much maybe 30% comedy, and then the rest just like a little bit of sci-fi, just for the time loop. And Happy Death Day to You is like 10% horror, and then it's like 60% sci-fi, or it's let's see, like 45% sci-fi, 45% comedy.
yeah, and there's like a drama angle to it also. I mean, I don't know how deep you want to get into it, but like even just the whole storyline, very briefly, like about her mom in this movie.
Yeah, which we do get into a little bit in this loop. Which why don't we go ahead and start with this loop, which is we're finally kind of getting into one of the shorter ones. This is only 4 minutes long,
Mhm.
and the previous ones have been like roughly like 10 to 15 minutes, I want to say.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is kind of us getting back into the routine of the first movie with Tree waking up again and knowing that she's in a time loop. And I think it's interesting, and I love that she wakes up and she's like, Tree, rookie move, Tree. Because this is a Tree that's she's well versed in a time loop. At this point, this is like her 13th. Let's see. Let me
Yeah, I think she
figure
does
out my math. She
8 in the
did
first one, right?
11.
11. Oh wow. Jeez.
Yeah, she did 11 and then 12. So yeah, this is her 13th birthday repetition based on what we've seen on screen. So she is well versed at this point.
Yeah,
And
and it's also like her willingness just to like go with the flow of this, because this
Mhm.
is arguably where in this movie it's like the second time it turns into like a different movie, right?
Yeah.
Because up until this point, we have been mostly focusing on Ryan.
Yeah,
And
the first two loops were Ryan, and then the last loop, we got Tree back in, and the last loop was Tree discovering that she was in a parallel universe rather than back in her own birthday in the original timeline.
But even that is so like to be like so nonchalant about that idea, where it's like we're not only just gonna kind of reset what happened to you in the first one, but now we're gonna introduce this element of this is a different universe. So now we're doing like Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. And now this is her second time waking up in this, already adjusted to the new world of like Carter dating Danielle and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Like that's kind of her, I guess, gonna be her cue to what dimension she's gonna be in, which in hindsight is strong because I do like the love story angle of these movies. I don't think it's as
Mhm.
prevalent in the first one, but I mean, it's definitely prevalent in the first one, but it's not like the main focus. It's kind of like a nice cherry on top with that
Yeah.
movie. But then with this one, there seems to be a little bit more kind of put into it. It's just funny that in two movies, like Carter, I guess, falls in love with her like twice without only ever knowing her for like one day.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
Which that's
it is college,
it's true.
which the relationships aren't quite as quick as high school relationships, but they're not that it's not
Yeah.
that far off either.
But the advantage of this being the second time that she's waking up in this like in this new dimension or alternative reality. What are we calling it?
Parallel universe.
Parallel universe. That's better. Yeah. Is that now that she, I guess, has one day under her belt, she can get a little bit more inquisitive, like about this world. Like, there's something interesting about the justification of a parallel universe, but still like the cure. Like, she knows that this is not her universe, so it's like things are going to be wonky in regards to like who the killers are later, and also with Danielle being with Carter. But then she's still like caught up in her feelings, and she's like like, what is it about Danielle? You know what I mean? And I was kind of thinking the same thing, which is like, why is Carter with Danielle in this universe? Just for the fun and games of having a parallel universe, right?
Yeah, for the for story for
Yeah,
plot reasons,
but
just to
he's a
throw a wrench in
nerd.
the in the
Yeah,
plot. Which I do like the efficiency in both of the movies where, Tree wakes up and she's like, what universe am I in?" And she just says, "Danielle," and Carter says, "My girlfriend."
yeah.
And she's like, same one."
Just to be like nitpicky a little bit, just because that's the fun of talking about these things. Like, do we really believe that like Danielle would ever be with Carter? You know what I mean?
Well, I do think that the big difference between Tree's Carter and then Tree's Danielle and this universe's Danielle is that this universe's Danielle is genuinely nice. And
Yeah,
that is what, when Tree asks, "How could you end up with someone like Danielle?" And he answers, "She's nice." And I feel like this movie is like hitting us over the head with the fact that this Danielle is nice. Like she still has the exact same personality, but she's actually nice and not just fake nice, which the other Danielle is fake nice and at any turn she's going to be mean, straight up mean
yeah.
to anybody around her. Where this one she has the same personality, but she is kind of genuinely nice.
Yeah, and it's interesting that with this movie too, that they don't. I feel like maybe you would in like maybe like a lesser movie or just a different movie in general, you would expect the alternate, the parallel universe to even be more off because there's like these differences are only like very minimal. Whereas
Mhm.
in like I feel like we could potentially see a world where she wakes up in a frat house and Carter's a frat boy. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like maybe he's not friends with Ryan in this universe. So like there's more kind of work to be done, but that's a lot more. That's just a lot more stuff that they then have to work around and everything. It's these like little simple changes that they do that I think it's nice, but it could have just as easily like went off the rails where like Carter's a douchebag and like has tattoos and he's like, I did sleep with you this time around, and it's just like, oh, geez. Because they do that in like Back to the Future too a little bit. It's how these
Yeah.
characters kind of change by being in a different universe. So it feels like this movie in general is like having its cake and eat it. And I think this kind of loop that we're talking about is a good example of how the writer shows restraint, but also lets it be fun enough to where he can maybe put the characters on this arc that he wants to put them on. So it's very cleverly done, but it's also just like it's a wacky do sequel. The fact that this is like what we're doing, right?
Yeah, and I do think that this Carter is a little, not fully as nice a guy as original universe Carter.
Hmm.
And this scene is really where we see that and to a certain extent because he has this is a Carter that's in a relationship with Danielle and he was at a party and presumably flirting with Tree who was and they were both reading into it but they were both likely wasted. Tree was definitely wasted and Carter was probably also drunk and he was less drunk and he took her to his dorm room, in his mind altruistically and, very chaste. They still sleep in separate beds. He
Hmm.
just he wanted to be the nice guy, make sure that she was okay for the night rather than having her go off and who knows where.
Yeah, and it also says something about like because then the movie never really gets into this, but what does it say about Tree in general? Because if she's like the constant between all these different universes,
Mhm.
right? Like no matter if she's in hers or in this new one, she's still just like this girl that is maybe inconsiderate of her friends, potentially sleeps with her friends or tries to sleep with her friends' boyfriends, and drinks a lot and all this kind of stuff. Like it's hard because it's one of these things where if you think about it too much, it's a little like, what the fuck is going on? But they never really explore that idea that no matter what universe she's in, maybe like Tree's lack of growth that she got from the end of the first movie is like a constant in every kind of universe.
Well, and we also don't really see Parallel Tree, and we don't get an idea of who Parallel Tree is, which I, based on what little, we have to glean a lot. I do feel like Parallel Tree is also a nicer version of Tree, because Parallel Tree is not having an affair with Gregory.
Hmm.
So she's not being the target of her jealous roommate. And, she still is partying, but that's practically every college student is going to have some partying and getting blackout drunk. But I think that with Parallel Tree having her mother still be alive, that, she's maybe not quite as um, bad, quite as bad a girl as original, pre Happy Death Day Tree was.
Yeah, and it I think in hindsight it feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity because they make her motivation very like black and white in the sense
Mhm.
of, well, in this universe my mom's alive, but I don't have Carter. And these are kind of like external physical um motivational kind of things. We can assume that she is a nicer person in this universe because of the fact that her mom's alive, because of the fact that like everything you just said, and maybe just because people in general are like being really nice to her. But I feel like it would have been interesting to maybe explore that a little bit more, because
Mhm.
one thing I can think of is just like, and this was probably, I think, the loop before the one that we're talking about, where she wakes up and she's like yelling and she's like going through the courtyard again. And like she throws like the girl's clipboard who's like coming up
Yeah.
to her, like that would have maybe been an interesting moment to like, and like I don't want to keep adding to it, but like, maybe she's the one with the clipboard. Maybe she's like, I don't know, how does she fit? How is she different like in this world? But once again, it's one of those movies where if you think about it too much, it's like, okay. So the writer's like, we're gonna keep it black and white. Mom's alive, friends are nicer, but she doesn't have Carter. And it's like, okay, that's fine. Because frankly, the sci-fi element of this movie is it's like more complicated than Endgame, right?
Yeah, and they also, another thing that we get here in the beginning with her waking up is she does get the pain in her side,
Yeah.
reminding us that these deaths do take a toll, a cumulative toll on Tree's body, which is something that I both like and dislike at the same time. Because I like because it does add a ticking clock, but at the same time I don't like because don't they don't give it the full weight that it needs. It's like they have one loop in the middle of both movies where she passes out from the toll that it takes, but then the rest of the time, and even in this loop specifically, at the end they're like, well, why don't you just kill yourself? And she's like, okay.
Well, it's like another example of like they're having their cake and eating it. It's like they're
Mhm.
introducing these interesting ideas, but because it's more of a comedy, I guess this second time around, we don't want the audience to get like too bogged down with it. But it's one of those things where if you think about it like too much, it becomes like, oh, wait a minute, this could be like really interesting. And what are the ramifications of dying over and over again? And all we really get to that is just, like you said, a blurry POV and then her just clutching her side. But we never really see like the actual, like what actually happens because of
Yeah,
that.
there's just one scene with her passing out and having to go to the hospital in each movie.
Yeah. Um, so I don't know. It's definitely like, because I looked up like we can kind of dive into this later about like the potential of like a third installment. But even with this one, like this wasn't necessarily a box office like failure. Like it had like a $9 million budget and it made like 64.6 back at the box
Mhm.
office. So it's not as close as the first one, which I believe had like 4.5 budget and then like $125 million box office. So it was like a
Yeah.
huge smash. But for a movie that has so much going on and it still is like cohesive, even though there were times where I had to remind myself, like, wait, what's going on? Oh, okay, that's right. Um, it's successful like in that regard of balancing all these kind of ideas. It just makes you wonder, like, Oh, well, did they have to put so much focus on maybe like this like uh, what would you call it? This like scientific device that is like the justification for how all this began in the first place. You know,
Mm.
like I don't know, it got really into the sci-fi stuff that when I was watching the second time around, I was like, my God, like they're really going for it, which
They're really
you know,
laying it on thick.
yeah, and it's cool because it's something new and it's different, but I really do like it more when it's more contained character self-exploration. And they touch on this earlier in the movie when they're at the basketball game because it's like Carter's idea to like hide in plain sight,
Yeah.
and
Like
it's
Carter is always the one, and he does again in this loop. He's always the one coming up with the good/bad ideas.
yeah, and even just to touch back on what you were saying about the difference of Carter really quick before I continue, Carter is definitely like more assertive in this timeline.
Mm.
He's definitely down, like he's a very good supportive character in the first one, but I do think he for some reason he cares enough to like really try to help her out in the second one that I think is a little bit more like, well, you do have a girlfriend, so why are you being this assertive? But once again, it's like don't think about it.
Oh, and again, I think, and this loop also, has that moment, right here whenever Ryan comes in, and he has the same line that we heard, so many times in the first movie. Did you hit that fine vagina or what? And I love that line, prompts Tree to go, oh, maybe you're not as not as nice a guy as I thought you were.
Yeah, it just doesn't lead anywhere. It's just kind of like it's like everything else, whether it's like the
I
clutching of
mean,
the
it kind of does because, at the end of the movie, this Carter is the one kissing Tree in the hospital at the end.
yeah, I guess I just took that though as like the destiny of like the love story where like these two are it doesn't matter which universe these two are in, they were almost kind of like meant to be together. So
Mhm.
anything that gets in the way of that is just like the parameters of that universe. Like, love
Yeah.
conquers all. Like,
Yeah, it's one of those where, you cheating is okay as long as the guy or as long as the person is cheating uh, with cheating on a bad person, a bad character, in this case Danielle, which, this Danielle is nicer, but but Danielle is still, not a great character. And
yeah.
so it's okay because Danielle is kind of a villain and Tree is the main character. So it's okay that he's cheating because he's cheating to get with Tree, who we as the audience like.
Yeah, it's floating on these really interesting things that if you just like lift up the lily pad on the pond, it's like and the director's like, no, no, don't lift it up. We're gonna hop across the pond on these lily pads and it's gonna be a fun time. But
Mm.
even like connecting that to then what I was originally saying about them being in the gymnasium and Carter like, okay, we'll go to the gymnasium and we'll watch the basketball game because it's safer in numbers. You know, they once again then talk about they have this conversation where he's like, oh well, I thought in the first time I did this around, this was about me like coming to terms with like my mom's death. And if that's not the case, if this was all started because of this like sci-fi machine, what does that say about my acceptance of my mom's death on my birthday? And then like Carter says something offhand about like, well, it doesn't make it any less like meaningful, does it? And she's like, yeah, I guess you're right. And to me, that was just kind of like the writer being like, well, we're not taking away from the first time, but we got to do this again. you know so it's
Yeah.
just touching these lily pads as you go across the pond. But my thing is like I really like it more when it's about that character exploration and really diving into it, because there's a lot of really interesting things that even we're just talking about right now, even just in regards to Carter, and he's a
Mhm.
secondary character.
Yeah.
So it's a freaking interesting sequel for sure.
Yeah, and another like line that I think is really interesting to dig into is, whenever Tree is leaving the dorm room, she says, "Oh, I have to get out of these disgusting clothes." And I think that is fascinating to me because diving into it the way I did with the first movie, I thought it was interesting because, her first loop in the first movie, she has 5 different outfits. But
Mhm.
then as the movie goes on, she ends up just wearing this shirt, you know, for the majority of the rest of the movie. She only has like a couple other costume changes
Yeah.
as we go through. And I kind of read that as this shirt is her connection to Carter because that is
Mm.
Carter's shirt. And in this movie, Carter is with Danielle, and this shirt is parallel Carter's shirt. And so because this Carter is with Danielle, Tree wants to get out of this shirt because she doesn't want to be wearing this Carter's shirt whenever this Carter is not with her. She wants to get rid of that connection as soon as possible and get into her own clothes.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I never even thought of that. Like, yeah, it's funny too because it's like we get used to like, you know, everybody else kind of wears the same clothes throughout the whole movie. I would love to see like the wardrobe on the set of this where it's just like, you know, 19 flannels for Carter and stuff like that. But no, that's a great point. And you know, this the deciding
And also it gives wardrobe an excuse to give Jessica Roth another outfit.
Yeah, for sure. But that's great because that's finding like the shows that there's like more meaning even behind these like little things. So like here I am griping about like all these kind of bigger stuff, and they're like, but look at the shirt. It's like great, okay, nailed it.
Yeah, and then one little detail which I'm not 100% sure, but I love the fact that I think Ryan's screensaver is Nyan Cat because I can see the rainbow and the star field, but I can't. The screen is at too much of an angle that I can't see the Pop-Tart cat, but I think it's Nyan Cat as his screensaver.
That's got to be like a little Easter egg because just like having that be like a reference of like Lost in Space, right? And that's me looking it up as you're talking about it.
Yeah, and then this is where we, like you said, this is where we get the little bit of drama again, where this is Tree's heartfelt plea to stay in this dimension so she can be somewhere where her mother is still alive.
Mm-hmm. Is that in this loop?
Yeah. She says, I need you to close the loop so I can stay in this dimension.
Gotcha. So that's kind of what indicates the whole then like, okay, here's what we're going to do. You're going to like learn the algorithm. You're going to have to memorize kind of all this stuff.
Yeah, which this is, I do like this scene because I think it's a fun little scene that points out one of the big problems with working with other people in a time loop because like they say, there's no way to keep a record of any sort of progress on anything that you're working on because everybody else is going to reset and any physical thing that you try to change is going to reset. And once again, it is Carter with the one who gives the suggestion that Tree has to be a living record and memorize all the attempts that they do, which I think it works in Groundhog Day because in Groundhog Day they show that Phil has a good memory. They kind of tease it as the movie goes, but this one we get the implication that Tree is just kind of an average student. She's not especially smart. She doesn't have an exceptionally good memory, but now she has to memorize all these facts and figures.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to talk about that too, because that's another example of if we could get a little bit deeper into understanding who this kind of character is. Like, I think if we didn't have so much like sci-fi jargon going on, we never know if she's like, I mean, the cliche is that if you're in a sorority or a frat, you're not maybe necessarily like the best at school. And that's just based off of my time of being in college.
Well, and she also refers to everybody as nerds. You're the science nerds, right?
Yeah. So it would have been interesting if there was something maybe we understood about her to where like maybe she was also on the cusp of like failing out of college because she never took school seriously. So now in the second movie, we're going to explore what happens when she like applies herself, because it's a fun gimmick to say you're going to be a living record and you're going to like learn all this stuff. And her just, this is the strength of her as an actor and as a performer, where she's able to sell this enough to where we don't have to get too deep about it. We don't have to care about it. But if we actually like dived into like, okay, what does it mean when you do actually apply yourself? What are you actually capable of? showing that like maybe she's getting excited that she is retaining this information, maybe that she's like she's finding something about herself that she never considered before. If you actually took that through line of her like being like everyone's a nerd, and then she learns to like appreciate the term nerd, by the end of this movie. But this movie's not really interested in that kind of character exploration. They want to like
They give us the mic drop at the end of the montage.
yeah, exactly. So she's just gonna learn it, and it's gonna be daunting. And Jessica Roth is like very charismatic and like funny and charming and stuff. So she's just gonna be like, in a sense, like, I gotta learn who did what now, and then I'm gonna go about it. But it could have been interesting to like see her maybe fail a little bit at being retentive and like learning this versus the failing of just, oh well, this algorithm didn't work or this sequence didn't work, because that's really the motivation of that montage, is that, oh, she's doing it, and like we got the fun song playing, and like she's retaining it all. But it would have been interesting to see like the frustration of like, my God, the only way I'm going to stay in this loop and keep my mom alive is if I actually learn quantum mechanics. Like that in itself is inherently funny, but instead they kind of put the focus more on like dying again, because this is Happy Death Day to You. But I don't know. I think it would have been kind of refreshing for that kind of character to have to like lean into school, right?
Yeah. And then, after that, we do get the conversation bringing up the fact that Tree says that there's a killer after her, which this is, another bit of the movie that I have a kind of an issue with, which I can understand. Like you can hand wave it away a bit that this is just, Tree's perspective, but Tree is the one that went to the hospital, and she didn't get any confirmation of who was behind the mask, and we know that Lori is not the killer, and they kind of hint that Toombs is not the killer because he's in the operating room, at least from what we get in that loop. He does play a part later in the movie again, but at this point in the movie we think that Toombs was in the OR, so he's most likely not the killer either. So I don't see why Tree leaps to the conclusion that the killer is after her, not knowing who the killer is this time.
Yes, this gets confused. This is like where the movie gets confusing, and it gets a little, I don't think convoluted is the word, because we haven't like at this point in the movie, we don't know what the result is to then like look back. And since you're going to be obviously, finishing the movie with more episodes, I don't want to like jump too much into spoilers for listeners, but this is where it just gets wonky, because up until this point, like when we first saw that Ryan was behind the mask and there was two Ryans, that was interesting and fun, right? Because it's like, oh, what are we going to do now? But then I started to think about the Rick and Morty episode where they kind of make fun of the Terminator. I don't know if you've ever seen that episode, but they use like snakes using time travel as a way of like eating your own tail and just going in a circle as a metaphor. And yeah, like when we get to this point in the movie where she says that line of like, well, there's a killer on the loose. Is there
not just the killer's on the loose, but the killer is after her specifically?
Yeah, after her. Yeah, no, thank you. Like after her specifically. Once again, it's like, what? How? Who? And then when we actually get to the point like later in the movie, which I won't spoil, where we do kind of figure out what's going on killer wise, it's just kind of like, oh, okay. Like that's not the point, I guess, but it's also kind of the point.
The killer was never after Tree. Tree was just in the way.
But so then that's like the issue, because then it's like, the first movie, and we talk about a lot this on the sequel podcast, Back Against Sequel podcast, subscribe. We talk a lot about this on the podcast, which is, the first movies of these are always so clean because there is such a simple premise. Even if it gets like big and bombastic, it's a simple thing that we can follow. Someone's trying to kill me. My days are repeating themselves. I'm going to figure out who's trying to kill me to get to the next day. In this one, I feel like we go through like 3 different rounds of this idea that are just kind of twisted. And when she says that line of like, someone's trying to kill me, I don't even know if we're justified of even saying that line from her perspective, or if we're saying it because, well, it's familiar and we need to remind the audience that there's another kind of ticking clock, right? But
Yeah,
it's
which I do think that, it is mildly forgivable because it is coming specifically from her perspective.
yeah,
We as the audience, we can explain it away and, say all the reasons why she's wrong in thinking that. But from her character in the moment, she was attacked by another babyface killer, and she doesn't know who it was, and the killer was specifically after her. And again, if and realistically, it was just because she was in the way. But from her perspective, the killer was chasing after her.
yeah. It's just kind of weird because compared to the first one, these are similar beats where we're going to have a montage that's going to take place to a nice song, and there's going to be like, what's the motivation for the day resetting itself. And the first one, she's trying to figure out who the killer is, and every time she follows somebody to see if that's the person, she finds out something about them, realizes that they're not the killer, and then when she turns around, the killer's usually there, like ready to kill her to reset the day. In this one, you have I forget which character specifically says it. You'll have to remind me. That says like, why don't you just kill yourself every day?
Samar.
Samar, yeah. So he's like, well, you could just kill yourself every day. And on one hand, and I won't go too much into the montage, but just the motivation for killing yourself. I understand the fun of her wanting to kill herself in fun ways because it's just fun for an audience to see. But
Yeah.
realistically, if this was like, okay, if this was like a serious thing that we got to figure out, she could just like wake up every day.
Go sleeping pills every time.
Yeah, she could just like wake up and just jump off the building every morning and then reset.
Or again, do sleeping pills, something that with minimal
Yeah.
long-term damage. Because again, and like I mentioned, we get a reminder with that pain in her side that these deaths have an impact. And just 2.5 minutes later, it's like she's completely forgotten about that. It's
Yeah.
like that's no longer an issue at the moment until it becomes an issue again.
For sure. And, even in the first one, all the ways that she's dying, all the fun ways that she's dying, that's at the hands of the killer. She's choosing all these ways that she's killing herself. And you kind of just like said it, like, why would you, if you had to kill yourself again, why would you go through all these like really painful, crazy ways to kill yourself if you know your body's going to like take those hits? Why don't you just like do a Sleeping Beauty, like you said, take a sleeping pill, lay in bed nice and gently, maybe put a little ice pack on your tummy, and then try to reset the day that way.
Yeah, and then we kind of we start the montage here with with some algorithms on the whiteboard and her looking at the computer, looking not confused, but trying her hardest to understand and memorize what they're doing. And then we kind of go into this, the B story within this montage, because it is about the fun ways that she's killing herself, but it's also there is this second level of her jealousy of parallel Carter and parallel Danielle being in a relationship together.
Do you think she is killing herself in these extravagant ways as a way of coping with dealing with Carter and Danielle?
I think there is a little bit of that, and again, that's something that I don't think I like as much in the second movie, because I don't think that is a good character beat for post first movie tree,
Mhm.
because she is supposed to be a better person. And I get that that doesn't necessarily mean that she's a perfect person yet. She can still have some character growth that she needs to go through, but it just it doesn't feel so much like this is fully the tree that we came to know and love in the first movie.
Well, it's unmotivated, right?
Mhm.
It's like you can have her die fun ways in the first one because it's happening to her, but when she's choosing to do it, and once again, this is the strength of Jessica Roth as a performer, where you're not really thinking about it, you're just enjoying watching her, like, jump in a wood chipper and stuff like that. But it really does. It's one of those things, like I've been saying, where like if you think about it too much, it's like, well, why are you doing that? Now, if they did put that in there to where, let's say, the first one was about her coping with her mom. The second one's about her coping like with herself, right? You could have it be that, well, she's using this as a distraction to try to hide from her feelings of getting over Carter. But even if that's the case, it's like, listen, I know she knows she spent 11 days with Carter dying in the first one, but she still doesn't know him like that well, right? And especially now if we're dealing with a parallel universe Carter where she is saying lines at him like, well, maybe you're not such a nice guy after all. Like, I just don't think that the motivation is there. And I'm saying this as someone who does still like enjoy this movie and enjoy these characters and
Mhm.
everything. But I agree with you. It doesn't really feel like, it's like, well, what am I supposed to understand about this character based off of what she's doing at this specific kind of time? Because yeah, she wants to stay here to keep her mom alive, but then how does that parallel then how she kills herself? And like, I don't know, it's a weird beat, I feel like.
Mhm. Yeah, and this is something that I do think is interesting because, as I've been doing this podcast, pretty much every movie and episode that I've kind of dug into in this way, I've appreciated more. And I feel like this is the first one where I'm seeing the holes a lot more. And whenever I first watched the first two movies this summer, getting ready for this season, I gave them both 5 stars on Letterboxd. I really enjoyed both of them. They're both very fun movies. And then as I watched the second one again, as preparing to dig into the second movie after having dug into the first movie, it's kind of dropped to a 4.5. I still really like it, but it's starting to drop a bit. And I if I had to predict, I would say watching it again after finishing this season and digging into it, I predict that it might drop, even a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a great thing to bring up because, now we can just briefly talk about letterbox reviews because I pulled up mine after you talked about yours. Letterbox reviews for Matt W. Watches. Feel free to follow me on Letterbox. Yeah, the first film I gave 4 stars and a heart because I just thought it was like a really just solid like genre movie that was able to bend horror comedy and stuff. Interesting because I don't remember when I logged this Happy Death Day 2U, but I have it at 3.5 stars. And after rewatching it, I think that I'd go 3 stars, maybe even 2.5. But to me, like 2.5 is like middle, like out of 5.
Mhm.
I think it's definitely like it's watchable, it's fine, it's enjoyable. 3.5 is like it's got a little bit more oomph to it. Like I enjoy that, and I think that it's commendable that they were able to tell this story in general with all the big ideas and stuff. But it's one of those things, like as we continue to talk about it, there's just like, oh, wait a minute, well, why is that happening, and why did she feel that way, and what's the motivation behind this? Like, even just to stay with that, like, imagine if she goes, oh, well, there's a killer trying to kill me, right? And then she continues that day, and then she realizes, oh, where's the killer?
Mhm.
And then she goes, okay, well, the killer's not here. I guess I have to like kill myself. Like the justification of being like, there's a killer after me, but I'm going to kill myself. It's like, well, wait, there's actually something there to where the killer's not after you. So where's the killer? But the movie's not really about the killer yet until it's about the killer, which is like later. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah,
So
it's almost like, if the killer wasn't like, if I could see it going that way, but then that and introduces, another challenge for the writer to figure out, because if she realized that the killer wasn't after her, and then she probably would have saw on the news that Lori had died, and then she would realize, oh, the killer's after Lori, and then it turns into that story rather than this story that they're wanting to tell.
Yeah, and I gotta ask you, did you ever think that the killer was going to end up being a tree, like how it was Ryan? Because that Ryan introduction is so interesting, but then it almost feels like the writer goes, "Well, I don't know what to do with this." Because if you have Ryan threatening other Ryan, saying, "Don't let him do this," like stop him from doing this, like that, those are stakes, right? But we never really explore why he feels that way, and there really is no follow through with that. So did you ever think that Tree was going to end up being like the killer from this universe? And if so, maybe that could have been a way that she dies every day again.
Yeah, I don't think I ever thought that, because I think I took it at face value, because Ryan does have the line, there is no parallel you in this universe, and then they just kind of hand wave it away with one line of dialogue. And I don't remember for sure. I think that whenever I watched it, I was just kind of what not fully passively watching it, but I wasn't like trying to guess how it was going to go. I was just watching it unfold and just kind of enjoying it that way.
I think they really like heavily rely on that. And I think it's because of like the energy of the movie, and because of the fact that we've done this before. They don't want you to think about it too much. But I on the second viewing, I had forgotten that Ryan was initially like the first one that like is behind the mask. And I was like, oh, like Jesus, like what is this gonna mean? And I think that there could have been something interesting, like, because I totally did not catch that line that you just said about how there is no parallel you in this universe. Like, who says that to her?
Ryan says it whenever they're all in the cafeteria.
Okay, but like, what does he know? Like, why can't that be true? Because if this whole thing is about, the mistake of Tree is thinking that she can be in this universe to keep her mom alive. And wouldn't it be interesting if there was another version of her killing her, trying to get back to her place in this universe? Because she's also like, I went to your universe and my mom is dead and I don't want to deal with that. So it's kind of your way of like dealing with grief again, but through the villain almost. And I think in hindsight, like that maybe could have been more interesting than what they end up doing in the third act, which once again I won't spoil, but just to stick with that justification of, well, we got to do this montage again where she's got to die every day. This movie decides to do it by saying kill yourself. But I think you could have did the same thing again with the first one, but then had this unique twist of like, well, who is the killer? Because I think if you don't have the motivation of I need to figure out who's killing me, I do think that really takes the steam out of like the middle, like the act 2 of this movie.
Yeah.
And they try to replace it with just like, Jessica Roth being in a bikini and jumping out of a plane, which is fun. And that's a good trailer shot. But from a character's perspective, it's not really contributing anything to the story. And it's really only like a fun plot device to kind of like, put that. I can't get that song out of my head now ever since watching that montage, like the hard times, gonna make it through.
Yeah, I haven't dug into that song too much. I figured I'd save it for the montage, because we'll have, I didn't think, well, I wouldn't say I didn't think we'd have much to talk about in this 4-minute sequence, but I figured that I'd have less to talk about in the montage, so I'd save the song for that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I love the song in the first montage. I really love that song.
What is it again? Can you remind me?
I'd have to remind myself. I know it was it's from like a Demi Lovato.
Oh, okay. Well, it's funny too, because I agree. I was wondering like what we were gonna like, how much we were gonna be able to talk about with like a 4-minute kind of clip. But honestly, this is a pretty pivotal moment in the movie, because this is like around the time where you do establish like, okay, what is the second tier of something that your protagonist is going to do to try to solve the situation? And unfortunately, I think we're finding a lot of really like,
and it is kind of a selfish motivation too, because Tree doesn't care about Parallel Tree. That she is
Yeah.
just like doesn't exist to this tree. And she just wants to take over. It's almost like single white female, but it's Tree and Parallel Tree. She just wants to take over Parallel Tree's life.
Yeah, and I guess you could maybe apply something to she's willing to kill herself as many times as possible to keep her mom alive. And I
Yeah,
think that kind of theme is definitely there, but it's only there when we put that kind of thought into it.
yeah.
But it still doesn't justify the way in which she's killing herself. And I guess you'd have to remind me I guess I'd have to listen to the next episode of when she's doing that montage. She does spend more time like with her mom in that montage, right?
Yeah, I just kind of I clicked through, and I think she does spend a little bit of time in like the second or third montage scene, or
Yeah.
like the third or fourth, if we count this one as the first.
Yeah. So I mean that it's all kind of there, but I don't think it's as prevalent as you would think about if you were watching it just like on
Mhm.
first glance. Whereas in the first one, it's kind of all there for you. Like
Yeah,
they do a
and
good
then
job of setting it up.
yeah, and then one other thing that I kind of just noticed going back and forth through the end of this montage is she does get yet another costume change. So in this 4-minute scene, she has four costumes because she starts out with the dumpster funk Carter long sleeve shirt that he sleeps in, and then she has the striped t-shirt and jeans during the conversation, and then during the memorization, she's changed into like a vertical red and white striped dress. And
Yeah.
that's also the same one that she is walking outside, seeing Danielle and Carter having a conversation with Danielle doing like a very fake laugh, or what feels like a very fake laugh, but having the romantic moment and the kiss with the tree creepedly kind of ducking behind the tree as she watches them, and then she gets yet another outfit as we see her in the pajamas in the bathtub.
Yeah, and the wardrobe could have played into like this identity as Tree, like whoever
Mhm.
Tree is in her dimension versus this dimension. And a TV show that just really did this kind of like inner self-exploratory idea of like what your identity means to you and how you present yourself to the world was Peacemaker season 2. I don't know if you watched Peacemaker at all, but
I've seen the first season, but I haven't gotten around to the second season.
well, I won't spoil anything for the second season as far as like what happens, but just based off stuff that's just in trailers that you can find. But Chris Peacemaker, he does find another universe where people love him, but what comes with that is like different wardrobe and different ways in which he like expresses himself and all these kind of things. So it's like it's the grass is always greener effect.
Mhm.
And if we maybe established more with Tree other reasons why she liked this universe besides her mom being alive, I think we could have gone into not only how she dresses, how other classmates view her, how she views herself. Like, yes, she does have Carter in that other timeline, but maybe there are other advantages to her in this timeline that is also, without her saying it out loud, like motivation to why she wants to stay here. And if we see her like, oh, look at this nice outfit that she's in, like just a shot of her going through her closet and being like, wow, look at all these nice outfits that I have. And I'm going to wear this one today. And then I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to wear this one today. Like that could have been interesting to the character, but I think then you would have had to cut back more on this, like, all these kind of other like nerd characters and this whole like kind of killer storyline and stuff. It's just I think there's a lot of stuff just right on the page or just within the character that you could have just explored a little bit more, because I do agree that wardrobe stuff is interesting, but it doesn't feel like that's motive, like the movie's not trying to say anything about it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and then I did want to talk about this first death of her in the bathtub,
Mm-hmm.
which I do think that and I didn't even think about it, but even her first death in this movie and this one, I feel like could be direct parallels to Groundhog Day, because we see Phil die three times in Groundhog Day, even though he references a few more. But we see him, drive off the cliff with the groundhog as the first one, which you could argue that one wasn't necessarily an intentional suicide. That one could be more accidental suicide, which
Mhm.
again does tie in with her first death, which was an accidental suicide.
Yeah.
But then he also does the swan dive off the top of the roof
Mhm.
is his third death, and then his second death is dropping the toaster into the bathtub, which he does wearing full pajamas, which Tree here is also wearing full pajamas as she drops the hair dryer, and they both kind of have the moment where Phil pushes the levers down on the toast and then drops the toaster in the tub, and Tree does a very similar thing. She turns the hair dryer on before dropping it into the tub. And then the other kind of big difference is, in Groundhog Day, they cut away immediately. They cut away and we just see the lights flickering in the lobby of the Cherry Street Inn. And in this one, we get the overhead shot with the animated electricity, lightning, the sparks, and Tree kind of comedically convulsing.
Yeah, and it could have been funny because at the end of the first one, there's the joke about how she's never seen Groundhog's Day,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe in this one she could have this version of Tree, and it could have been funny because maybe in this one, this version of Tree just has a memory of seeing Groundhog's Day, right?
Well, she
So
doesn't get her memories because she does
yeah,
have the scene where she's looking through the phone of pictures of her mom from the past 3 years, saying, these are not my memories.
that's true. I'm just trying to like help justify because there's clear parallels between how she's killing herself and how Bill Murray killed himself. And maybe in this world, if she had taken the time to watch it and see it, because I'm just gonna try to give her like some kind of benefit of like, I'm gonna kill myself every day. How am I supposed to kill myself every day? And then she watches Groundhog Day and then she goes, okay, I'll do that because that looks like fun, right? But the whole reason why Bill Murray kills himself the ways that he does, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it turns into just morbid curiosity,
Well,
right?
I think he does it because he's fallen into a deep depression, because that's
Mhm.
that in that point in the movie, he failed to date Rita, and so he's just kind of getting into a depressive funk that's life doesn't matter if it continues to reset, and so he's just like at the point where he uh, knows that he's stuck in the day, so he's just depressed about it before he kind of comes back around into taking advantage and taking the lesson to improve himself.
Yeah, but like even like that motivation of like I'm so depressed that I'm gonna think of all these like different ways to kill myself. Like that depression's a stronger motivator than like what is the reason she kills herself the way that she does? It doesn't
Yeah,
matter, but it does a little bit, you know?
yeah. And and I do think that it is just ways to kill herself that's interesting for the audience to see,
Yeah.
and that's somewhat comedic, a way for them, the for Christopher Landon as the writer to make it funny.
Yeah. I guess it's like he knows that a lot of this stuff is gonna be very uh he knows that there's a lot that he's
Yeah.
throwing at us. So I think this is like our little break in the movie just to enjoy her like doing these kind of things. But yeah, looking back on it, I think that in general, I would make my letterbox review more like 2.5 stars instead of 3.5 this time around.
Yeah, and then the kind of the last thing that I'll say, which again is kind of another nitpick gripe about the movie, where I this method of death I don't think would work because there should be a GFCI outlet in the bathroom, so it would it wouldn't shock her. It would just trip trip the outlet breaker, and
Mhm.
nothing would happen. Especially, I think it's you can hand wave it in Groundhog Day because for one thing it was the 90s, but also the Cherry Street Inn was theoretically an older building, so it might not have had updated electrical. But this is a sorority house. This is, 30 years in the future. It should be GFCI protected. It should be, she should not be able to kill herself in this manner in 2015.
I gotta say, if there's any electricians out there listening, I would love to actually have an electrician podcast where they go through different movies and be like, well, the way that the building was wired. I actually think that's really fascinating.
But I think we've talked about this 4-minute scene, plenty long enough.
Yeah, I agree.
Do
We
you have
found a lot of
any?
interesting stuff though along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have anything else that you want to say about the movie before I let you go?
I think in general, I'm going to strictly talk from coming from a sequel perspective with our podcast. Once again, well, first of all, just thank you for having me on. Enjoy the show. I love that you guys are talking about the sequel, and even just to talk about from the Back Against Sequel podcast perspective. I would say that there are far worse sequels out there. And what we really try to appreciate on our show is sequels that don't strictly just come back for a cash grab, where they are really trying to do something. And Christopher Langdon, he said that like he had this idea for the movie in his head, like as he was writing the first one. So it doesn't feel like an afterthought.
Well, he didn't, slight correction. He didn't write the first one. Scott.
Oh,
Lobdell.
he didn't. Oh, wow.
No.
Okay. My bad. So he wrote this second one though.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Well, even more so, the fact that he came back to this and he wanted to at least try to do something that wasn't just a repeat. I don't think he necessarily hit the mark, but it is entertaining enough to where it's not something that you have to worry about too much with it. I don't think it has the rewatchability as the first one does. And I don't know. I think that's pretty prevalent with like the box office, but it still has a pretty good Rotten Tomatoes score. But if you'll indulge me for a second, on our show, we always break it down to 3 questions at the end of the show, which is, does it work as a sequel? Is it enjoyable, entertaining, and does it need to exist? And obviously you are going to continue finishing the movie and stuff like that. So you can cut this out if you don't want it in the episode, but I'd love to also bring you into this where it would get like a check or an X to find out overall if it was worth going back again. And for me, I would say that it kind of works as a sequel just on paper. In execution, I think it does a good job of like distracting you from some of these like errors that we're kind of pointing out after the fact. I do think it's enjoyable / entertaining, but I don't think it needs to exist. So overall, I'd probably give it like 2 checks and an X in regards to how the Back Against Sequel podcast would view the sequel. I'd love to know your opinion on it as well, but I think that overall, I appreciate movies that even if they're coming back a second time around, still just try to put in that effort of, listen, we know we already did this, but you enjoy these worlds and these characters, and we're going to try our best to entertain you. I just think he got a little too focused on trying to repeat too many elements from the first one, where he could have did more character exploration. So that's kind of my thing.
Yeah, and I think that Christopher Landon is not as good of a writer as Scott Lobdell, who wrote the first one.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the best elements are, from my perspective, I think the best elements are the ways that he mirrored the first one. I appreciated and enjoyed all of those mirroring elements, and I think they worked well. And overall, I think I'm right there with you that I think that it does work as a sequel. It's enjoyable to watch, but it does not need to exist. I think the first one stands on its own much better as a standalone. And I don't think that you needed to explain the time loop, but I think that he does a decent job with the sequel in taking it into a different direction. And I do enjoy a lot of the other elements that he brings in. I love the Danielle as a character and what they do and how they somehow manage to have a heist in this movie.
Yeah.
It's so silly and comedic, but I kind of love it, and I'm curious as to what he would end up doing in the third one if it does end up actually happening, which it may or may not happen. I know that it's potentially in the works, but I think 2 or 3 months later, still haven't heard any new updates. So it's kind of up in the air whether or not it will actually happen or not. But
Yeah.
yeah. But thank you for joining me and talking to me about this 4-minute scene. And why don't you take a moment to let people know where you and your podcast can be found online?
Yeah. Once again, thanks so much for having me online. You can find the Back Against Sequel podcast available wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search Back Against Sequel podcast. The premise is, one movie was successful. The studios decided to do a follow-up. So me and usually a guest or my partner, Drew, we will dive into it, ask those 3 questions. Does it work as a sequel? Is it enjoyable / entertaining? And does it need to exist? To an overall answer of, is this worth going back again? So you can find that wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can check out our YouTube channel where I cut video to all of our reviews. It's a lot of work. It's really annoying, but it's very entertaining. And you can find that at BA Sequel Podcast. We're also on Instagram at @backagain_sequel podcast. And you can follow us on X at WAG Media, because I haven't changed the name yet. But yeah, I really appreciate you having us on to talk about this. I love talking about movie sequels. That's why I spend so many grueling hours editing episodes, as I'm sure you do as well. But no, it's really cool, and it just goes to show you with this show that you're doing here about how even something that's only 4 minutes long, you can really dive into, and you really find out something maybe you didn't think about with that scene before you kind of delved into it. So I would encourage all your listeners to keep listening to what you guys are doing, because it's great, and I had a really great time. So just thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. And as always, I'm Bubbawheat, and you can find me on all social media where I'm at Bubbawheat. I'm most active these days on Threads, so that's the best place to follow me if you want to keep up to date with what I'm watching and doing. And we also have a Facebook group. It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group. You can join that to have discussions about episodes as they come out, and anything time loop related is all welcome there. So until next time.
I mean, I guess you could just kill yourself before they find you.
Wow, another genius idea.